The Mindset of High Achievers, How Successful People Think Differently. Written and published by Rising Audiobook. Introduction. Why do some people seem to rise above every obstacle while others remain stuck, despite having similar talents, opportunities, or intelligence? Why does one person transform their dreams into reality while another spends years wondering what went wrong? Most people believe success belongs to the lucky, the gifted, or the privileged. They assume high achievers possess some rare quality that ordinary people simply don't have. But what if that belief is completely wrong? The truth is that the greatest difference between ordinary and extraordinary people is often invisible. It cannot be measured by wealth, appearance, education, or background. It exists in the mind. It is found in the thoughts people repeat daily, the beliefs they choose to embrace, and the decisions they make when no one is watching. Every day, countless individuals unknowingly sabotage their own potential. They allow fear to shape their choices, doubt to silence their ambitions, and limiting beliefs to define what they think is possible. Meanwhile, high achievers face the same fears, setbacks, and uncertainties, but they think differently. This audiobook will reveal the hidden mental habits that separate those who continuously grow from those who remain trapped in the same place, year after year. You will discover the mindset shifts that create confidence, resilience, discipline, and purpose. Because success is not reserved for a select few. It begins the moment you learn to think differently, and that journey starts now. Chapter 1. The moment you decide your life can be more. There comes a moment in many people's lives that cannot be marked on a calendar. No celebration announces it. No crowd applauds it. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary day. Yet inside, something shifts forever. It might happen while sitting alone late at night, staring at a ceiling and wondering if this is all life has to offer. It might arrive after another disappointing year, another missed opportunity, or another promise made to yourself that was never kept. Sometimes it appears in the middle of success, when everything seems fine on the surface, but something deep within whispers, there has to be more than this. That whisper is powerful. It is the beginning of awakening. Most people spend years moving through life on autopilot. They wake up, follow routines, meet expectations, solve immediate problems, and repeat the cycle again and again. Days become weeks. Weeks become years. Without realizing it, they become so busy surviving that they forget to ask whether they are truly living. Existing and living are not the same thing. Existing is getting through the day. Living is being pulled by a purpose. Existing is accepting whatever life gives you. Living is actively shaping the future you want. Existing is watching opportunities pass by, while convincing yourself that someday things will change. Living begins when you decide that someday is no longer good enough. The mindset of every high achiever starts with this realization. Before the success, before the recognition, before the accomplishments, there is often a moment of dissatisfaction. Not a toxic dissatisfaction that comes from constantly comparing yourself to others, but a healthy dissatisfaction that says, I was made for more than this. Many people fear dissatisfaction because they associate it with unhappiness. But dissatisfaction can be one of the greatest gifts life gives us. Comfort rarely inspires transformation. Comfort encourages us to stay where we are. Growth begins when we become uncomfortable with remaining the same person year after year. Think about it. Every major achievement in human history began because someone became dissatisfied with what already existed. Every invention, every breakthrough, every remarkable journey started when someone looked at reality and refused to accept that it was the final version of what was possible. The same principle applies to your life. Nothing changes until you become unwilling to settle for less than your potential. The beautiful thing about high achievers is that they are not born with certainty about their future. They do not possess magical confidence from the beginning. They experience fear. They experience doubt. They experience confusion. What separates them is not the absence of these emotions, but their response to them. At some point they make a decision. A decision is a fascinating thing. It often appears small in the moment. It doesn't immediately change your bank account, your career, your health, or your circumstances. Yet it changes something far more important. It changes your direction, and direction determines destiny. Imagine a ship crossing an ocean. A tiny adjustment in its course may seem insignificant at first, but over time, that small shift leads to an entirely different destination. Human lives work the same way. One decision can quietly alter the course of your future. The decision to learn instead of complain. The decision to try instead of wait. The decision to believe possibility is greater than fear. The decision to stop making excuses and start taking responsibility. These moments rarely feel dramatic. They often feel simple. Yet years later, people look back and realize that everything changed because of a single choice they made when nobody was paying attention. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is not failure. It is never discovering what you were capable of becoming. Too many people spend their lives carrying hidden dreams they never pursue. They convince themselves they are too old, too inexperienced, too ordinary, or too late. Eventually, those excuses become stories. Those stories become beliefs. And those beliefs become invisible walls that keep them trapped. High achievers think differently. They understand that the future is not something that happens to them. It is something they help create. They refuse to allow current circumstances to become permanent definitions of who they are. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" they begin asking, "What if I succeed?" Instead of seeing limitations, they start looking for possibilities. Instead of focusing on what they lack, they focus on what they can build. This shift changes everything. The moment you decide your life can be more, a new chapter begins. The circumstances around you may remain the same for a while. The challenges may still exist. The obstacles may not disappear overnight. But your perspective changes, and when perspective changes, action follows. When action follows, growth begins. Every extraordinary life starts with an ordinary moment of awakening. A moment when someone stops drifting. A moment when someone chooses possibility over resignation. A moment when someone looks at their future and says, "I am not finished becoming who I am meant to be." That moment is where the journey of every high achiever truly begins. Chapter 2. Escaping the prison of self-doubt. Imagine carrying an invisible cage everywhere you go. No one else can see it. It doesn't have bars made of steel. It doesn't lock your hands or restrict your movement. Yet it quietly determines what risks you take, what opportunities you pursue, and what version of yourself you allow the world to see. That cage is called self-doubt. For many people, self-doubt becomes such a familiar companion that they stop questioning it. They assume the voice inside their head is telling the truth. They mistake fear for wisdom, hesitation for caution, and insecurity for reality. Over time, they begin organizing their lives around limitations that may not even exist. The tragedy of self-doubt is not that it makes you feel uncertain. The tragedy is that it convinces you to settle for less than you are capable of becoming. High achievers understand something most people never realize. Self-doubt is not evidence. It is only a feeling, yet feelings can be incredibly persuasive. Think about how self-doubt speaks. It rarely shouts. It whispers. You are not ready. You don't know enough. What if you fail? What if people judge you? Maybe someone else is better suited for this. The voice sounds reasonable, logical even. It presents itself as protection. It claims to be helping you avoid embarrassment, disappointment, or rejection. But beneath that disguise, it often steals opportunities before they ever have a chance to become reality. The strange thing about self-doubt is that it rarely appears out of nowhere. Most of us learn it. Perhaps it began with criticism during childhood, a careless comment from a teacher, a painful rejection, a mistake that made us feel ashamed, a comparison that left us feeling inadequate. Over time, experiences become stories, stories become beliefs, and beliefs become identities. A child who hears, "You're not good enough," often grows into an adult who silently repeats the same message to themselves. A person who experiences failure may begin believing they are a failure, Someone who is rejected may start believing they are unworthy. The original event may have happened years ago, but the belief continues to live on long after the moment has passed. What makes self-doubt so dangerous is that it doesn't simply affect how you feel, it affects how you act. Consider a talented employee who has worked hard for years. They consistently perform well. They solve problems. They earn respect from colleagues. Deep down, however, they believe they are not qualified for a leadership role. When a promotion becomes available, they hesitate. They spend weeks analyzing every reason they might not be ready. They focus on their weaknesses. They compare themselves to others. Eventually, they convince themselves not to apply. Months later, someone with less experience receives the position. The difference wasn't talent. The difference wasn't intelligence. The difference was courage. One person believed they needed confidence before taking action. The other understood that confidence often comes after action. This is one of the most important lessons high achievers learn. Most people wait to feel confident before they begin. High achievers begin before they feel confident. They understand that confidence is not something you find. It is something you build. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. Nobody begins with confidence. Nobody sits on a bicycle for the first time and feels completely certain they won't fall. Confidence develops through experience. It grows each time you try, adjust, learn, and continue. Life works exactly the same way. The person who speaks confidently today was once terrified to speak. The entrepreneur who runs a successful business was once uncertain and inexperienced. The athlete who performs under pressure was once nervous and unproven. Confidence is often the result of repeated action, not the prerequisite for it. Unfortunately, self-doubt convinces people to reverse this process. It tells them to wait. Wait until you're ready. Wait until you're perfect. Wait until you're certain. Wait until fear disappears. But readiness is often an illusion. Perfection never arrives. Certainty is rare. And fear has a habit of staying longer than expected. If you spend your life waiting for complete confidence, you may spend your life waiting. High achievers challenge their doubts instead of automatically believing them. When the voice says, "You can't do this," they ask, "Is that actually true?" When the voice says, "You'll fail," they ask, "What evidence supports that belief?" When the voice says, "You're not good enough," they remember how many times they have grown, learned, and overcome obstacles before. This doesn't mean they never experience insecurity. It means they refuse to give insecurity the final vote. There is a profound difference between listening to your thoughts and obeying them. Not every thought deserves your trust. Some thoughts are based on fear. Some are based on old wounds. Some are based on assumptions that no longer serve you. The mindset of a high achiever involves learning to separate facts from fears. A fact is that you may not know everything yet. A fear is believing you'll never be capable. A fact is that success requires effort and growth. A fear is believing you're incapable of growth. One opens doors, the other closes them. Perhaps the hidden cost of self-doubt is not what it makes you feel today. It is what it prevents you from experiencing tomorrow. Every opportunity you never pursue, every dream you never attempt, every relationship, achievement or breakthrough that remains unexplored because you decided you weren't enough. Those losses are difficult to measure because they exist only as possibilities, yet they shape entire lives. The most remarkable transformations often begin with a simple decision, the decision to stop treating self-doubt as truth. Not because all uncertainty disappears, not because confidence suddenly arrives, but because you finally understand that growth happens through movement. The person you want to become is waiting on the other side of action. And every time you take a step despite fear, every time you challenge a limiting belief, every time you act before feeling completely ready, the bars of that invisible cage begin to weaken, until one day you realize something extraordinary. The prison was never locked, and the door had been open all along. Chapter 3. Taking ownership of your story. If you could sit down and read the story you tell yourself every day, would it inspire you, or imprison you? Most people never stop to ask this question. They move through life carrying a narrative that was written years ago, a collection of experiences, disappointments, failures and assumptions that gradually became their identity. Somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing it as a story and started seeing it as the truth. Perhaps their story says they never had the right opportunities. Perhaps it says they come from the wrong background. Maybe it reminds them of mistakes they made years ago, mistakes they still carry like heavy stones in their pockets. Whatever form it takes, the story quietly influences every decision they make. High achievers understand something that changes everything. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. This realization is one of the most liberating moments in a person's life. Many people spend years trapped in a cycle of blame. They blame their circumstances, their upbringing, their education, their family, the economy, bad luck, or the people who hurt them. To be clear, some of these challenges are very real. Life is not equally fair to everyone. Some people begin their journey carrying burdens others never have to face. But there is a critical difference between acknowledging reality and surrendering to it. Blame focuses your attention on what you cannot control. Ownership focuses your attention on what you can. That difference may seem small, but it creates entirely different lives. Imagine two people facing the same difficult situation. Both experience failure, both encounter obstacles, both feel discouraged. The first person spends years asking, "Why did this happen to me?" The second person eventually begins asking, "What can I do now?" The first question keeps them trapped in the past. The second moves them toward the future. High achievers are not people who have perfect circumstances. They are people who refuse to let circumstances have the final word. Ownership is often misunderstood. Many people hear the word and immediately think of blame. They assume taking responsibility means criticizing themselves or carrying unnecessary guilt. But true ownership is not about self-punishment. It is about personal power. When you take ownership of your life, you stop waiting for someone else to rescue you. You stop depending on ideal conditions before making progress. You stop handing control of your future to people, events, or situations beyond your influence. Ownership says, "I may not control everything that happened to me, but I control what I do next." There is incredible freedom in that statement. One of the greatest obstacles to ownership is our relationship with the past. Many people continue fighting battles that ended years ago. They replay painful memories repeatedly, examining old failures through the harsh lens of regret. They define themselves by moments that should have remained temporary. A failed business becomes proof that they are not capable. A broken relationship becomes proof that they are unworthy. A rejected opportunity becomes proof that they are not talented enough. The event ends, but the story continues. The human mind has a remarkable ability to transform experiences into identities. What happened once begins to feel like who we are forever. Yet high achievers think differently. They understand that failure is an event, not a person. They understand that mistakes are experiences, not identities. They understand that difficult chapters are part of the story, not the entire story. Consider how differently your life might feel if you stopped introducing yourself through your wounds. What if you stopped measuring your future by your worst moments? What if the mistakes that once embarrassed you became lessons that strengthened you instead? The truth is that every meaningful life contains chapters of struggle. Every successful person has moments they wish they could redo. Every achiever has experienced rejection, disappointment, uncertainty, and setbacks. What separates them is not the absence of failure. It is their refusal to build a permanent home inside it. They learn from the past without living there. This ability to rewrite your story is not about denying reality. It is about changing the meaning you assign to it. The same experience can produce two completely different interpretations. One person says, "I failed, therefore I am incapable." Another says, "I failed, therefore I learned something valuable." One interpretation creates helplessness. The other creates growth. The event is the same. The story is different, and stories shape destiny. This is why ownership is so powerful. It shifts your focus away from everything beyond your control and places your attention where it belongs. You cannot control the mistakes you made 10 years ago. You can control the decisions you make today. You cannot control the opportunities you missed. You can control the opportunities you pursue now. You cannot control other people's opinions. You can control your effort, your attitude, and your response. The moment you truly understand this, life begins to feel different. Problems that once seemed overwhelming become manageable. Challenges that once felt permanent become temporary. You stop wasting emotional energy, fighting battles you cannot win, and start investing it in actions that move you forward. This does not mean the journey becomes easy. There will still be setbacks. There will still be moments when doubt returns. There will still be circumstances beyond your control. But ownership changes your relationship with those challenges. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of life, you begin seeing yourself as a participant in creating it. Instead of asking why things keep happening to you, you begin asking how you can grow through them. Instead of waiting for circumstances to improve, you become the person capable of improving circumstances. That is the mindset of high achievers. They understand that extraordinary lives are not built by people who have all the answers. They are built by people who take responsibility for finding the next answer. The story of your life is still being written. The pages behind you matter, but they are not the final chapter. No mistake, failure, disappointment, or difficult circumstance has the authority to decide how the story ends. That decision belongs to you. And the moment you take ownership of your story, you stop being a passive character in your life and become the author of what comes next. Chapter 4. Dreaming Bigger Than Your Fear. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the dream you rarely talk about. Not the safe dream, not the one that sounds reasonable to everyone around you. Think about the dream that stirs something deep inside your heart. The dream that excites you and terrifies you at the same time. The dream that feels almost too big, too ambitious, too far away. Now ask yourself a difficult question. If fear were removed from the equation, what would you do? For many people, the answer arrives immediately. They would start the business, write the book, change careers, move to a new city, pursue a meaningful goal, speak up, take a chance, love more openly, live more boldly. The tragedy is that most people never discover what lies on the other side of that answer, because fear convinces them to remain where they are. Fear is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. We often assume that fear is a sign we should stop, retreat, or abandon our goals, but high achievers understand something different. They understand that fear is often not a warning that something is wrong. It is a signal that something matters. Think about the moments when fear appears most strongly. It rarely shows up when the stakes are low. It rarely appears when you are doing something ordinary or familiar. Fear becomes loudest when growth is possible, when change is approaching, and when you are standing at the edge of a bigger future. That is why so many people experience fear before a major opportunity. The fear isn't always about failure. Sometimes it is about transformation. Part of you wants the dream. Another part fears what pursuing that dream might require, the possibility of rejection, the possibility of criticism, the possibility of becoming someone different than you are today. Growth always asks us to leave something behind, and that can feel uncomfortable. This is where many people become trapped. They assume that courageous people don't feel fear. They imagine successful individuals moving through life with complete certainty and confidence. Nothing could be further from the truth. High achievers feel fear just as deeply as everyone else. They experience moments of doubt. They question themselves. They worry about outcomes. They wonder whether they are capable. The difference is not the absence of fear. The difference is the decision to move forward anyway. One of the most important distinctions you can learn is the difference between realistic caution and limiting fear. Realistic caution protects you. It encourages preparation. It helps you recognize genuine risks and make thoughtful decisions. Limiting fear does something entirely different. It exaggerates risks. It magnifies uncertainty. It creates imaginary obstacles and convinces you that staying comfortable is safer than growing. Realistic caution says, prepare carefully. Limiting fear says, don't try at all. Realistic caution encourages wisdom. Limiting fear encourages paralysis. Many dreams die not because they were impossible, but because someone confused fear with wisdom. Consider the story of two aspiring entrepreneurs. Both have an idea. Both are passionate. Both spend months researching, learning, and planning. Both dream about building something meaningful. The first person continues planning year after year. Every time they get close to launching, they discover another reason to wait. The website isn't perfect. The timing isn't right. The market feels uncertain. They tell themselves they are being responsible, but beneath the surface, fear is quietly controlling the decision. 5 years pass. The dream remains a dream. The second person is just as afraid. They also feel uncertain. They also worry about failure, but they decide to begin before everything is perfect. Their first attempt is imperfect. They make mistakes. They encounter setbacks. They learn lessons they never could have learned from planning alone. Slowly they improve. Slowly they grow. Eventually, they build something successful. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It was the willingness to act, despite uncertainty. This is one of the defining characteristics of high achievers. They understand that clarity often comes after action, not before it. Most people believe they must see the entire path before taking the first step. Life rarely works that way. Imagine driving through a dark night. Your headlights may only illuminate a small section of the road ahead, yet you continue moving forward because you trust that each stretch of light will reveal the next. Goals work similarly. You do not need complete certainty to begin. You need enough courage to take the next step. The problem is that comfort zones feel deceptively safe. They provide familiarity, predictability, security. Even when we are unhappy, there is comfort in knowing what to expect. But comfort zones have a hidden cost. They protect us from failure, but they also protect us from growth. They protect us from rejection, but they also protect us from opportunity. They protect us from discomfort, but they also protect us from transformation. A comfortable life is not always a fulfilled life. Many people spend years trapped in routines that no longer inspire them because the discomfort of change feels greater than the pain of staying the same. High achievers eventually realize something profound. The cost of remaining where they are becomes greater than the fear of moving forward. That realization changes everything. Suddenly, fear no longer becomes a stop sign. It becomes a signal that growth is nearby, a signal that possibility exists, a signal that they are stretching beyond old limitations. This shift in perspective allows them to dream bigger, and dreaming bigger is not simply about achieving more. It is about expanding what you believe is possible for your life. Every significant achievement begins as a vision that does not yet exist. Before the accomplishment comes the belief. Before the reality comes the imagination. Before the success comes the willingness to see beyond current circumstances. People who accomplish extraordinary things are not necessarily more talented than everyone else. Often they are simply willing to entertain possibilities that others dismiss. They allow themselves to imagine a future larger than their present reality. They refuse to let current limitations determine future outcomes, and most importantly, they understand that dreams are not meant to remain safely stored inside the mind. Dreams are invitations, invitations to grow, invitations to risk, invitations to become. The future you desire may not be guaranteed. There are no promises. There are no perfect outcomes. There are no paths completely free from uncertainty. But there is another certainty worth considering. If fear makes every important decision for you, your future will always be smaller than your potential. High achievers refuse to accept that outcome. They choose vision over comfort. They choose possibility over paralysis. They choose growth over familiarity. And with every courageous step they take, They prove something remarkable. Fear may walk beside them, but it no longer determines the direction of their life. That privilege belongs to the dream. Chapter 5. Turning pain into purpose. There are moments in life that divide us into two versions of ourselves: the person we were before the pain and the person we become after it. A rejection letter arrives. A relationship ends. A dream falls apart. A business fails. Someone we trusted disappoints us. Suddenly, the future we imagined no longer exists, and we are left standing in the wreckage of expectations we once held so tightly. In those moments, pain feels deeply personal. It feels unfair. It feels permanent. It feels as though life has singled us out and handed us a burden we never asked for. No one volunteers for hardship. No one wakes up hoping to be rejected, disappointed, or tested. Yet if you study the lives of high achievers, you begin to notice a pattern. Nearly every remarkable person carries a story of struggle. Behind the success that others admire, there is often a chapter filled with setbacks, failures, heartbreak, and moments when giving up would have seemed completely reasonable. The difference is not that high achievers avoid pain. The difference is how they respond to it. Most people view pain as an interruption to life. High achievers eventually learn to see it as part of life. They understand that adversity is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is a teacher. Sometimes it reveals strengths they never knew they possessed. Sometimes it forces growth that comfort never could. This does not mean suffering is enjoyable. It does not mean every hardship arrives with an obvious lesson attached to it. In fact, when we are in the middle of pain, meaning is often difficult to find. When your heart is broken, you do not immediately see the wisdom. When your efforts fail, you do not instantly recognize the opportunity. When life disappoints you, perspective is usually the last thing you possess. Yet time has a remarkable way of revealing truths that pain initially hides. Think about the challenges you have already survived. Chances are there were moments you thought you would never overcome, situations that felt unbearable, obstacles that seemed impossible. Yet here you are. Perhaps those experiences taught you resilience. Perhaps they revealed who truly cared about you. Perhaps they forced you to become stronger, wiser, or more compassionate. Perhaps they showed you capabilities you never would have discovered otherwise. Pain often contains lessons that comfort cannot teach. Comfort rarely demands courage. Comfort rarely develops resilience. Comfort rarely forces self-reflection. Growth is often born in places we would never voluntarily choose to visit. One of the most important choices a person can make after experiencing hardship is deciding what the pain will mean. This choice is rarely discussed, yet it shapes entire lives. When people experience disappointment, they often stand at an invisible crossroads. One path leads toward bitterness, the other leads toward growth. Bitterness whispers dangerous messages. It shouldn't have happened. Life is unfair. People can't be trusted. Why even try again? These thoughts may feel justified. Sometimes they may even feel true. But bitterness has a hidden cost. It keeps us emotionally connected to the very pain we want to escape. It turns wounds into permanent identities. It convinces us that because something hurt us once, it will always hurt us. Growth offers a different path. Growth asks difficult questions. What can I learn from this? How can this experience make me stronger? What wisdom can I carry forward? Growth does not deny the pain. It simply refuses to waste it. This is one of the defining characteristics of high achievers. They do not allow suffering to be meaningless. They look for value within difficulty. They search for lessons inside setbacks. They transform obstacles into fuel. Consider someone who is rejected from an opportunity they desperately wanted. At first, the rejection feels devastating. They question their abilities. They wonder if they are good enough. They feel embarrassed and discouraged. Many people stop there. High achievers pause, feel the disappointment, and then begin asking different questions. What skills can I improve? What feedback can I learn from? What can this experience teach me that success could not? Eventually, The rejection becomes part of their growth rather than the end of their story. The same event produces a completely different outcome because of the meaning assigned to it. This ability to create meaning is incredibly powerful. Human beings can endure extraordinary challenges when they believe there is purpose behind the struggle. Without meaning, pain feels unbearable. With meaning, pain becomes part of a larger journey. That does not mean every difficult experience happens for a reason. Sometimes life is messy and unpredictable. Sometimes bad things happen without explanation. But even when we cannot control what happens, we can often control what we choose to do with it. That choice changes everything. Some of the world's greatest achievements were born from moments of adversity. Many successful people pursued their goals because of difficulties they experienced earlier in life. Their pain became motivation. Their struggles became fuel. Their setbacks became reasons to keep going rather than excuses to stop. The hardship did not destroy them. It transformed them. This transformation is available to anyone willing to embrace it. The next time life disappoints you, remember that pain is not always a sign that you are on the wrong path. Sometimes it is evidence that you are growing beyond your current limitations. Every challenge carries a hidden question. Will this experience make you smaller or stronger? Will it convince you to quit or inspire you to continue? Will it become an anchor that holds you back or fuel that pushes you forward? The answer is not found in the event itself. It is found in your response. High achievers understand that while they cannot always choose their circumstances, they can choose their perspective. They can choose whether pain becomes a prison or a teacher. And over time, those choices shape who they become. The hardships that once threatened to break them eventually become the very experiences that build their strength. The disappointments that once brought tears become stories of resilience. The setbacks that once felt like endings become beginnings. Because when pain is given purpose, it loses the power to define you. Instead, it becomes part of the foundation upon which a stronger, wiser, and more determined version of yourself is built. Chapter 6. The courage to begin before you feel ready. There is a question that quietly steals years from countless lives. What if I'm not ready? It sounds responsible. It sounds wise. It sounds like the kind of question a thoughtful person should ask before pursuing something important. Yet hidden beneath those words is a trap that keeps dreams waiting indefinitely. It keeps books unwritten, businesses unstarted, opportunities untouched, and potential unrealized. Many people spend their lives preparing for a future moment when they will finally feel ready. They imagine a day when confidence will arrive, fear will disappear, and certainty will replace doubt. On that day they tell themselves they will begin. But that day rarely comes. The truth that high achievers eventually discover is both simple and uncomfortable. Readiness is often a myth. Most meaningful journeys begin long before a person feels prepared for them. Think back to some of the biggest moments in life. Few people feel completely ready for their first job, their first leadership role, their first major responsibility, or any challenge that demands growth. New experiences are unfamiliar by definition. If complete readiness were required before taking action, almost no one would ever move forward, yet many people continue waiting. They convince themselves that one more course, one more plan, one more month of preparation, or one more year of thinking will finally provide the certainty they seek. What they do not realize is that endless preparation can sometimes become a sophisticated form of avoidance. Preparation is valuable. Growth requires learning. But there comes a point where preparation stops serving progress and starts protecting us from discomfort. At that point, what looks like responsibility is often fear wearing a disguise. Fear has a clever way of making delay seem reasonable. It says, wait until you know more. It says, wait until the timing is perfect. It says, wait until you feel confident. The problem is that life rarely offers perfect timing. Circumstances are never flawless, conditions are never ideal, and confidence rarely appears before action. In fact, confidence is usually the result of action. This is one of the most important mindset shifts high achievers make. They stop seeing confidence as a prerequisite and begin seeing it as a byproduct. They understand that confidence is earned through experience, not imagination. Consider someone who dreams of becoming a public speaker. For years, they admire skilled speakers from a distance. They watch videos, read books, and imagine themselves standing confidently before an audience. Yet whenever an opportunity arises, they find a reason to postpone it. They worry that they are not polished enough. They fear making mistakes. They want to feel more confident first. Months turn into years. The dream remains alive, but it remains untouched. Eventually, something changes. Perhaps they grow tired of waiting. Perhaps they realize that fear is not leaving anytime soon. Whatever the reason, they agree to give their first small presentation. It is not perfect. Their voice shakes slightly. They forget a few points. They leave feeling they could have done better. But something important happens. They survive. Then they speak again. And again. Each experience teaches them something new. Each attempt removes a little uncertainty. Each step strengthens abilities that could never have been developed through observation alone. The confidence they were waiting for does not arrive before they begin. It emerges because they began. This pattern repeats itself in almost every area of achievement. The entrepreneur gains confidence by launching. The writer gains confidence by writing. The leader gains confidence by leading. The athlete gains confidence by competing. Action creates evidence. Every time you take a step forward, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you previously believed. One reason people struggle to begin is that they imagine successful individuals started with certainty. They see the finished result and assume confidence was present from the beginning. They do not see the nervous first attempts, the awkward early efforts, or the countless mistakes made behind the scenes. Every accomplished person has a collection of imperfect beginnings hidden beneath their success. The first speech was not perfect. The first product was not perfect. The first chapter was not perfect. The first attempt was not perfect. And that is precisely why it mattered. Progress requires imperfection, because imperfection is evidence that learning is taking place. Every skill develops through trial, adjustment, and repetition. The desire to avoid mistakes often becomes the very thing that prevents growth. Many people mistakenly believe that failure comes from acting too soon. More often, failure comes from waiting too long. Opportunities pass, momentum fades, excitement disappears. The dream becomes increasingly distant as hesitation grows stronger. High achievers understand that movement creates momentum. They know that action generates clarity. Questions that seem impossible to answer while standing still often become obvious once the journey begins. Imagine trying to learn how to swim by reading books about swimming. You could study techniques for years, understand every principle, and memorize every detail. Yet eventually, there is only one way to truly learn. You must enter the water. Life operates according to the same principle. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. Some forms of growth only occur through participation. Some answers reveal themselves only after the first step has been taken. This requires trust, not blind confidence, not certainty. Trust. Trust that you can learn. Trust that you can adapt. Trust that you can recover from mistakes. Trust that growth is possible. High achievers are not fearless people. They simply trust their ability to handle what comes next, more than they fear what might go wrong. That distinction changes everything. The future will always contain uncertainty. There will always be risks, challenges, and unknown outcomes. Waiting for all uncertainty to disappear is like waiting for the ocean to become perfectly still before setting sail. The journey belongs to those who are willing to leave the shore anyway. At some point, every meaningful dream asks the same question: will you begin before you feel ready? For those who answer yes, something remarkable happens. They discover that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more. They learn that confidence grows through action, wisdom grows through experience, and opportunities often appear only after movement begins. The people we admire most are not those who had perfect beginnings. They are those who found the courage to start despite imperfect conditions. Because the truth is, the life you want is not waiting for a future version of you who has everything figured out. It is waiting for the version of you who is willing to begin today. Chapter 7. Building Unshakable Discipline. The alarm clock rings at 5 a.m. outside. The world is still asleep. The room is warm, the bed is comfortable, and every part of the body argues for a few more minutes of rest. In that quiet moment, a decision is made. Not a dramatic decision that will make headlines, not a decision anyone else will notice. Just a simple choice between comfort and commitment. An athlete pulls back the blanket, stands up, and begins training. Meanwhile, somewhere else, another athlete with similar talent, similar goals, and similar dreams decides to stay in bed because motivation isn't there today. At first, the difference seems insignificant. One morning cannot possibly matter that much. But success is rarely determined by what happens once. It is shaped by what happens repeatedly. Months later, years later, those small decisions accumulate into dramatically different outcomes. This is the power of discipline. Many people believe success is driven by motivation. They wait for inspiration to arrive before taking action. They hope to wake up feeling energized, focused, and eager to pursue their goals. When motivation is present, progress feels easy, work becomes exciting, effort feels natural. The problem is that motivation is unreliable. Some days it arrives without invitation, other days it disappears completely. Motivation is influenced by emotions, energy levels, circumstances, weather, stress, and countless factors beyond our control. If success depended entirely on feeling motivated, very few people would accomplish anything meaningful. High achievers understand this truth early. They appreciate motivation when it appears, but they never depend on it. Instead, they build something far more reliable: discipline. Discipline is the ability to continue moving forward even when emotions suggest otherwise. It is the decision to honor commitments regardless of temporary feelings. It is showing up when enthusiasm fades, when progress feels slow, and when nobody is watching. This is why discipline often separates dreamers from achievers. Dreamers act when they feel inspired. Achievers act because they made a commitment. The distinction may sound simple, but it changes everything. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. After watering it for a week, nothing appears. After 2 weeks, the soil still looks unchanged. If you relied entirely on motivation, you might conclude that your effort is pointless. You might stop watering because visible results are absent. But discipline understands something motivation often forgets. Growth frequently happens beneath the surface long before it becomes visible. The same principle applies to almost every worthwhile goal. The first workouts do not immediately transform the body. The first pages written do not immediately become a book. The first savings deposits do not immediately create wealth. The first attempts at learning a skill do not immediately create mastery. For a period of time, effort and reward appear disconnected. You work, but the results seem invisible. This is where many people quit. High achievers stay. They continue showing up during the phase when progress is difficult to measure. They trust the process long enough to experience the rewards hidden inside consistency. One reason discipline feels challenging is that human beings naturally seek immediate gratification. We enjoy actions that produce instant rewards. Discipline often asks us to make sacrifices today for benefits that may not arrive until months or years later. That requires a different way of thinking. It requires learning to value long-term fulfillment more than short-term comfort. The disciplined person understands that today's actions are shaping tomorrow's reality. Every decision becomes a vote for the person they are becoming. Each workout is a vote for health. Each study session is a vote for growth. Each act of persistence is a vote for the future they want to create. Over time, these votes begin to define identity. This is another secret of high achievers. They do not rely solely on willpower. They create systems. Many people approach goals emotionally. They wake up and decide whether they feel like working toward them. The problem is that emotions fluctuate constantly. Some days enthusiasm is high, other days it disappears. Systems remove that uncertainty. A writer commits to writing every morning at the same time. An athlete follows a training schedule regardless of mood. A student studies according to a routine, rather than waiting for inspiration. These systems reduce the number of decisions required. They create structure where inconsistency once existed. When success becomes part of a routine instead of a negotiation, progress accelerates. This does not mean discipline feels easy. There will be mornings when you want to quit. There will be days when results seem non-existent. There will be moments when others appear to be advancing faster than you. Discipline does not eliminate these challenges. It teaches you how to move through them. One of the greatest misconceptions about disciplined people is that they enjoy every step of the journey. In reality, even highly successful individuals experience resistance. They feel tired. They become discouraged. They question themselves. What makes them different is that they do not allow those feelings to become commands. Feelings are temporary. Commitment is intentional. High achievers learn to respect their emotions without surrendering their goals to them. This mindset becomes especially important during difficult seasons. Everyone feels committed when progress is obvious. Everyone feels enthusiastic when success arrives quickly. The true test comes during periods when effort continues, but results remain hidden. Consider a person working toward a significant goal for months without recognition. They wake up early, make sacrifices, and remain dedicated. Yet externally, very little seems to change. Friends question their efforts. Doubt begins to appear. The temptation to quit grows stronger. This is where discipline reveals its true value. Discipline allows a person to continue planting seeds even when no harvest is visible. It creates stability during uncertainty. It provides direction when motivation disappears. Most importantly, it builds trust. Not trust in perfect outcomes, but trust in oneself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your confidence grows. Every time you follow through despite difficulty, you strengthen your character. Every time you choose commitment over comfort, you become a little more reliable in your own eyes. That inner trust is priceless. Many people struggle with confidence because they repeatedly break promises to themselves. They set goals, abandon them, and then wonder why self-belief feels weak. Confidence is often built through evidence. When you consistently prove that you can be trusted to do what you said you would do, confidence naturally follows. This is why discipline creates freedom rather than restriction. From the outside, discipline may appear limiting. It requires effort, consistency, and sacrifice. Yet over time, it produces opportunities that undisciplined living cannot provide. Financial freedom often comes through disciplined habits. Physical strength often comes through disciplined training. Professional success often comes through disciplined effort. The very actions that seem restrictive in the short term often create greater freedom in the long term. High achievers understand this trade-off. They are willing to endure temporary discomfort because they are focused on a larger vision. They know that extraordinary outcomes are usually the result of ordinary actions repeated consistently. In the end, discipline is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming dependable. It is about continuing when excitement fades, staying committed when progress slows, and showing up even when nobody notices. Anyone can take action on a good day. Anyone can feel motivated when conditions are ideal. But the people who achieve extraordinary things are often those who continue taking small, meaningful steps on ordinary days, day after day, choice after choice, promise after promise. Eventually, those choices compound into a life that looks remarkably different from where it began, and what once appeared to be discipline reveals itself as something much deeper, a quiet form of self-respect, expressed through consistent action, long after motivation has gone home. Chapter 8. Finding Strength in Failure. Few words carry as much emotional weight as the word failure. For some people, It immediately brings back memories they would rather forget. A failed exam, a rejected application, a business that collapsed, a dream that didn't work out, a moment when they gave everything they had and still fell short. Even years later, those experiences can linger in the mind, quietly shaping how a person sees themselves. Failure has a way of feeling personal. When something important doesn't work out, it is easy to believe that the outcome says something about who we are. What began as a disappointing event slowly transforms into a painful identity. Instead of saying, "I failed," people begin thinking, "I am a failure." That single shift has stopped countless people from pursuing their potential. Yet if there is one lesson that high achievers learn earlier than most, it is this: failure is not the opposite of success. More often than not, it is part of the path to success. This idea may sound comforting in theory, but it becomes much harder to accept when you are standing in the middle of disappointment. When effort has not produced the result you hoped for, failure rarely feels like a lesson. It feels like loss. That is why perspective matters so much. The same experience can either become a permanent stopping point or a temporary classroom. The event itself may not change, but the meaning attached to it changes everything. High achievers develop the habit of viewing failure differently. Instead of treating it as evidence that they should quit, they treat it as information. They ask questions that most people never think to ask. What went wrong? What can I learn? What needs to improve? What would I do differently next time? These questions transform failure from a verdict into feedback. Imagine a student who spends months preparing for an important examination. They sacrifice free time, study diligently, and genuinely believe they are ready. Then the results arrive, and they fail. The disappointment is immediate. They feel embarrassed. They question their intelligence. They wonder whether they are capable of achieving their goals at all. For a period of time, the failure seems larger than the future itself. Many people stop there. They allow one outcome to define what they believe about themselves. But another student responds differently. After the initial disappointment fades, they begin analyzing what happened. They discover weaknesses in their study habits. They realize they focused heavily on certain topics while neglecting others. They identify mistakes in preparation and time management. The next time they take the exam, they approach it differently. Not because they are smarter, not because they are luckier, because they learned. Eventually they achieve results that exceed their original expectations. The failure that once seemed devastating becomes one of the most valuable experiences in their journey. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout life. Failure often teaches lessons that success cannot. Success can sometimes hide weaknesses. When things go well, we rarely stop to examine every detail. We celebrate the outcome and move forward. Failure forces reflection. It demands honesty. It reveals gaps in knowledge, preparation, mindset, or strategy. As uncomfortable as that process can be, it often creates growth. Think about the qualities people admire most in high achievers: resilience, patience, humility, determination, adaptability. These qualities are rarely developed during periods of constant success. They are forged during adversity. A person learns patience when progress is slow. They learn resilience when they must recover from disappointment. They learn adaptability when their original plan falls apart. They learn determination when quitting feels easier than continuing. Failure becomes the training ground for character. This is one reason every meaningful pursuit includes setbacks. If your goal is significant enough to matter, it will challenge you. There will be obstacles. There will be moments when things do not go according to plan. There will be unexpected difficulties that no amount of preparation could have prevented. Many people interpret these moments as signs that they should stop. High achievers interpret them differently. They understand that difficulty is not evidence that the journey is impossible. It is evidence that the journey is real. Growth rarely follows a straight line. There are detours, there are delays, there are disappointments. Yet every setback contains the potential for wisdom if we are willing to look for it. One of the most damaging beliefs people carry is the belief that successful individuals rarely fail. We see achievements, awards, accomplishments, and milestones. What we often do not see are the years of mistakes behind them. We do not see the rejected proposals, the unsuccessful attempts, the opportunities that disappeared, the plans that fell apart, the moments of doubt, the failures hidden beneath visible success. Because of this, many people assume they are uniquely flawed when they experience setbacks. They compare their struggles to someone else's finished story. But failure is not a sign that you are incapable. It is often a sign that you are trying. The person who never fails may simply be avoiding challenges large enough to reveal their limits. The person who occasionally fails is often stretching beyond comfort, pursuing growth, and attempting things that matter. There is courage in that. Perhaps the greatest gift failure offers is resilience. Resilience is not built by avoiding hardship. It is built by surviving hardship. Every time you recover from disappointment, you become stronger. Every time you adapt to a setback, you become wiser. Every time you continue despite discouragement, you develop confidence that cannot be gained through easy victories alone. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The fear of failure starts losing its power. You realize that failure is not the end. You realize you can recover. You realize setbacks are survivable. And once you understand that, you become willing to take bigger risks, pursue larger dreams, and challenge yourself in ways that once seemed impossible. That is the mindset of high achievers. They do not seek failure, but they do not fear it. They understand that every setback contains a lesson, every obstacle contains an opportunity to grow, and every disappointment contains the possibility of becoming stronger. The goal is not to avoid failure altogether. The goal is to learn from it so thoroughly that it becomes part of your success story. One day you may look back on a failure that once broke your heart and realize it was shaping you all along. The setback that felt like an ending was teaching you resilience. The disappointment that felt unfair was developing wisdom. The obstacle that seemed determined to stop you was preparing you for something greater. Because failure, when approached with the right mindset, is not a dead end. It is a doorway. And on the other side of that doorway often stands a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of yourself than you ever imagined possible. Chapter 9. The Quiet Power of Consistency. A single drop of water seems harmless. It falls onto a stone, disappears, and leaves no visible mark. If you watched only that moment, you would never believe it possessed any real power. Yet allow that same drop to fall in the same place day after day, year after year, and eventually even stone begins to change. Life often works in much the same way. We are naturally drawn to dramatic transformations. We admire breakthrough moments, overnight success stories, and extraordinary achievements. We love the idea of a single decision changing everything instantly. Yet when you look closely at the lives of high achievers, you discover something far less glamorous but infinitely more powerful. Their success is rarely built on one extraordinary moment. It is built on thousands of ordinary moments repeated consistently. This truth can feel disappointing at first. Most people want faster results. They want visible progress. They want proof that their efforts are working. But high achievers understand something that many never fully grasp. Small actions, repeated over time, create outcomes that seem impossible in the beginning. The challenge is that consistency often feels insignificant while it is happening. Writing a few pages today does not feel life-changing. Saving a small amount of money does not feel transformational. Exercising for 30 minutes does not seem extraordinary. Reading a few chapters of a book does not appear remarkable. The individual action seems too small to matter, and that is exactly why so many people underestimate it. Human beings are naturally focused on immediate results. We want to see progress quickly because visible rewards reinforce effort. When those rewards are absent, motivation begins to fade. We start questioning whether our actions are making any difference at all. High achievers think differently. They understand that many of life's most valuable rewards operate according to a delayed timeline. They know there is often a gap between effort and outcome. During that gap, it may appear that nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, small improvements are quietly accumulating. Imagine someone who dreams of writing a book. The goal feels overwhelming at first. Hundreds of pages, thousands of words, a finished manuscript seems impossibly distant. Faced with such a large task, many people become discouraged before they begin. But imagine that person commits to writing just a few pages every day. At the end of the first week, the progress seems modest. After the first month, the book is still far from complete. Even after several months, the final goal remains distant. Yet they continue, day after day, page after page, month after month. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The collection of small efforts becomes a complete manuscript. What once seemed impossible becomes reality, not because of a single burst of brilliance, but because consistency quietly performed its work. This is the compound effect in action. Small actions often appear powerless in isolation. Their true power emerges through repetition. Each effort builds upon the previous one, creating momentum that grows stronger over time. The same principle applies to nearly every area of life. Healthy habits compound, knowledge compounds, skills compound, relationships compound, confidence compounds. Success itself often compounds. The challenge is that most people quit before the compounding becomes visible. They plant seeds and expect a harvest immediately. When results do not appear quickly enough, they assume the process is failing. In reality, many worthwhile pursuits require patience before rewards become apparent. Think about how nature works. A tree does not emerge fully grown overnight. For a long time, growth happens underground. Roots spread through the soil where no one can see them. From the outside, it appears as though nothing is happening. Yet beneath the surface, essential development is taking place. Human growth follows a similar pattern. There are periods when your efforts seem invisible. You study but do not yet feel smarter. You train but do not yet see dramatic physical changes. You practice but do not yet feel like an expert. You work hard but do not yet receive recognition. These moments test your ability to trust the process. High achievers understand that visible results are often preceded by long periods of invisible progress. They learn to continue even when evidence is limited. They trust that consistent effort is creating changes that will eventually become impossible to ignore. This mindset requires patience, a quality that has become increasingly rare in a world obsessed with speed. We live in an era of instant communication, instant entertainment, and instant access. As a result, many people expect instant success as well. But meaningful achievement rarely follows that pattern. Mastery takes time, character takes time, growth takes time. Extraordinary outcomes often require years of ordinary effort. Patience is not passive waiting, it is active persistence. It is continuing to show up while understanding that important things develop gradually. It is remaining committed to the process even when the finish line is not yet visible. One reason consistency outperforms intensity is that intensity is difficult to sustain. Many people approach goals with bursts of enthusiasm. They become highly motivated for a few days or weeks. They work at maximum effort, expecting rapid transformation. Eventually, exhaustion arrives. Life becomes busy. Motivation fades. The habit disappears. Then the cycle repeats. They start strong. Stop. Start again. Stop again. Meanwhile, someone else takes a quieter approach. They do not work perfectly. They do not move at extraordinary speed. They simply remain consistent. While others repeatedly begin and abandon the journey, they keep moving forward. Over time, consistency creates an advantage that intensity alone cannot match. This is why high achievers often appear unstoppable. Their secret is not endless motivation. Their secret is reliability. They understand that showing up consistently matters more than occasionally performing at an extraordinary level. They focus less on perfection and more on repetition, less on dramatic breakthroughs and more on daily progress, less on quick results and more on long-term growth. Eventually, those small efforts begin to accumulate into something extraordinary. The person who reads every day becomes knowledgeable. The person who practices every day becomes skilled. The person who saves consistently builds financial security. The person who writes consistently creates a body of work. The person who improves just a little each day becomes almost unrecognizable from who they once were. That transformation rarely happens suddenly. It happens quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day the results become impossible to deny. The mindset of high achievers is rooted in this understanding. They know that success is not usually the result of a single brilliant moment. More often, it is the reward for countless small decisions made consistently over time. When others become discouraged by slow progress, they continue. When others abandon the process, they remain committed. When others demand immediate results, they practice patience, because they understand a truth that changes everything. Extraordinary lives are often built through ordinary actions repeated with extraordinary consistency. And in the end, it is not the intensity of your effort on your best day that shapes your future. It is what you choose to do on the ordinary days that follow. Chapter 10. Protecting your mind from negativity. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a garden. Every day something is planted there. Some seeds become confidence, hope, courage, and resilience. Others become fear, doubt, bitterness, and anxiety. Whether we realize it or not, the thoughts we repeatedly entertain, the conversations we regularly engage in, and the influences we allow into our lives are constantly shaping what grows within us. The challenge is that negativity rarely announces itself as a threat. It often arrives quietly. It appears in the form of a pessimistic voice, a discouraging opinion, a constant stream of bad news, or an internal belief that whispers, "What's the point?" Over time, these influences begin to affect the way we see ourselves, other people, and the future. High achievers understand something that many people overlook. Protecting your mind is just as important as developing your skills. You can have talent, intelligence, and opportunity, but if your thinking becomes dominated by negativity, those advantages gradually lose their power. The mind is where every achievement begins. Before a goal becomes reality, it exists as a thought. Before action is taken, a belief is formed. If the mind becomes overwhelmed with destructive thinking, progress becomes much more difficult. This is why successful people pay close attention to what they allow into their mental environment. Most people understand the importance of protecting their physical health. They know that unhealthy food consumed consistently will eventually affect the body. Yet many people allow harmful mental influences into their minds every day without recognizing the impact. Negative conversations, constant criticism, endless comparisons, fear-based information, self-defeating thoughts. Each one may seem harmless on its own, but together they create an environment that slowly shapes perception. Human beings are deeply influenced by their surroundings. The people we spend time with, the content we consume, and the ideas we repeatedly hear all leave an imprint on our thinking. If someone constantly hears that success is impossible, they eventually begin questioning their own potential. If they are surrounded by people who focus only on problems, they may start overlooking opportunities. If negativity becomes the dominant voice in their environment, it often becomes the dominant voice in their mind. This does not mean we should avoid reality or pretend difficulties do not exist. High achievers are not blindly optimistic. They acknowledge challenges, they face obstacles honestly, but they refuse to allow negativity to become their default perspective. There is a profound difference between recognizing problems and becoming consumed by them. One mindset searches for reasons something cannot work. The other searches for ways it might. One mindset focuses entirely on limitations. The other remains aware of possibilities. This distinction becomes especially important during difficult times. Consider two individuals facing the same setback. Both experience disappointment. Both encounter obstacles they did not expect. Both feel frustration and uncertainty. The first person becomes trapped in the problem. They replay everything that went wrong. They focus on what was lost. They repeatedly tell themselves how unfair the situation is. As days and weeks pass, their attention remains fixed on disappointment. Eventually, their perspective begins influencing their behavior. They become hesitant, discouraged, and increasingly unwilling to take action. The second person experiences the same emotions. They are disappointed too. They feel the same frustration. But after acknowledging the setback, they begin asking different questions. What can I learn from this? How can I adapt? What opportunity might still exist here? The challenge is identical. The outcome becomes completely different. Not because one person was luckier, but because one person chose a perspective that created movement instead of paralysis. This is one of the greatest powers we possess. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can often influence how we interpret it. The stories we tell ourselves matter. A person who constantly thinks, "I always fail," begins looking for evidence that supports that belief. A person who thinks, "This is difficult, but I can learn from it," begins looking for solutions. Thoughts become filters through which we experience reality. That is why high achievers are careful about their internal dialogue. They understand that the voice they hear most often is their own. Many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they care about. They magnify mistakes, criticize imperfections, and assume the worst about their abilities. Over time, this internal negativity becomes exhausting. Replacing destructive thoughts does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing thoughts that are both honest and empowering. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," they learn to say, "I haven't mastered this yet." Instead of saying, "Everything is falling apart," they ask, "What is still within my control?" Instead of saying, "This setback defines me," they remind themselves, "This is one chapter, not the entire story." Small shifts in language create powerful shifts in perspective. Another important aspect of protecting the mind is developing emotional resilience. In today's world, negativity is impossible to avoid completely. Criticism exists. Disappointment exists. Unexpected challenges exist. If your peace depends on a perfectly positive environment, you will struggle because such an environment does not exist. Resilience allows you to remain grounded even when negativity surrounds you. It is the ability to hear criticism without losing confidence, to experience setbacks without losing hope, to face uncertainty without surrendering to fear, to continue moving forward despite temporary discouragement. This strength is not developed overnight. It grows through practice. Every challenge you overcome strengthens your ability to handle future challenges. Every setback you survive reminds you that difficult moments are temporary. Every obstacle you face successfully increases your trust in your ability to adapt. High achievers understand that protecting their mindset is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. They choose carefully what they focus on. They choose carefully who influences them. They choose carefully which thoughts deserve attention. Most importantly, they understand that the quality of their thinking shapes the quality of their lives. The world will always contain negativity. There will always be reasons to doubt, worry, complain, or fear. Those influences are unavoidable. What matters is whether they are allowed to take root. Your mind is one of your greatest assets. It influences every decision, every action, every relationship, and every goal you pursue. When you protect it, nurture it, and fill it with thoughts that support growth, something remarkable happens. You begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles. You begin to find lessons where others see defeat. You begin to discover strength where others surrender to fear. And over time, that difference in thinking creates a difference in living, because extraordinary achievement is not only built through what you do, it is built through what you allow to grow within your mind every single day. Chapter 11. Becoming the person your future requires. Picture yourself 5 years from now. Imagine that the goals you have been working toward have finally become reality. The dream career has arrived. The business is thriving. Your confidence is stronger. Your relationships are healthier. You have achieved things that once seemed distant and uncertain. Now consider a deeper question. Who did you have to become in order to create that future? Most people spend their lives focusing on what they want. They think about the outcomes they desire, the goals they hope to reach, and the results they wish to experience. There is nothing wrong with this. Goals are important. Vision matters. Ambition creates direction. But high achievers understand something that changes the entire journey. Success is not only about achieving something, it is about becoming someone. This distinction is powerful because lasting transformation rarely begins with external results. It begins with internal change. Before a person builds a successful business, they must become someone capable of running one. Before they develop confidence, they must begin thinking and acting differently. Before they achieve meaningful goals, they must grow into the version of themselves that can sustain those achievements. Many people want a different life while continuing to think, behave and make decisions in the same ways that created their current reality. Unfortunately, life rarely works that way. New outcomes usually require a new identity. This is why lasting success begins with transformation from the inside out. Imagine someone who wants to become physically healthy. They may focus entirely on the goal of losing weight or improving fitness. But if they continue identifying themselves as someone who avoids exercise, makes unhealthy choices, and lacks discipline, the desired change becomes difficult to sustain. Eventually, old habits pull them back toward old results. Now imagine someone who begins seeing themselves differently. Instead of focusing only on the outcome, they begin building the identity of a healthy person. Their decisions start changing. Their habits start changing. Their standards begin changing. Over time, the external results follow because the internal identity has already shifted. The same principle applies to every area of life. A person who wants to become financially successful must develop the habits and mindset that support financial growth. A person who wants to become a writer must begin thinking and acting like one before the world recognizes them as one. A person who wants to become confident must practice the behaviors of confidence before confidence fully develops. High achievers focus less on chasing outcomes and more on becoming the type of person capable of producing those outcomes repeatedly. This requires honesty. It requires looking at your current habits and asking difficult questions. Are my daily actions aligned with the future I claim to want? Do my routines support my goals or sabotage them? Am I becoming the person my dreams require? These questions are not always comfortable, but they are necessary. The future is often built through ordinary daily choices. Habits may seem small in the moment, but they quietly shape identity over time. Every action reinforces a belief about who we are. When you keep promises to yourself, you reinforce the identity of a disciplined person. When you continue learning, you reinforce the identity of a growth-oriented person. When you act courageously despite fear, you reinforce the identity of a confident person. The actions may appear insignificant, but their cumulative effect is profound. Eventually, habits become character. Character becomes identity. Identity influences destiny. This process also requires letting go. One of the hardest parts of personal growth is releasing old versions of ourselves. People often imagine growth as adding something new. In reality, growth frequently involves subtraction. You may need to let go of limiting beliefs. You may need to release old excuses. You may need to abandon stories that no longer serve you. You may need to stop identifying with past failures. This can feel surprisingly emotional, because familiar identities provide comfort even when they are holding us back. A person who has spent years seeing themselves as shy may resist opportunities that require confidence. Someone who has always viewed themselves as unlucky may struggle to recognize opportunities when they appear. A person who defines themselves by past mistakes may unconsciously avoid future possibilities. The old identity feels safe because it is familiar. But growth often requires stepping beyond familiarity. It requires giving yourself permission to evolve. The truth is that you are not obligated to remain the person you were yesterday. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to outgrow beliefs that once defined you. High achievers understand this deeply. They do not see personal growth as a destination. They see it as an ongoing process of becoming. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to expand. Every setback becomes a chance to develop resilience. Every new responsibility becomes an invitation to grow into a stronger version of themselves. This mindset creates extraordinary possibilities because it removes artificial limits. Instead of asking, "Am I capable of this?" they begin asking, "What do I need to learn in order to become capable?" That question shifts the focus from limitation to growth. It transforms obstacles into opportunities for development. It reminds us that most abilities are not fixed, they are built. The person you admire today was not born with all the qualities they possess. They developed them over time through choices, experiences, effort, and commitment. They became who they are through growth. The same possibility exists for you. Your future dreams may seem large today. They may require skills, confidence, discipline, and wisdom you do not yet fully possess. That is perfectly normal. You are not expected to be that future version of yourself today. You are only expected to grow toward them. Every day provides an opportunity to move closer. Every habit strengthens identity. Every choice shapes character. Every act of courage expands possibility. Over time, these seemingly small changes create remarkable transformation. One day you may look back and realize that the greatest achievement was not the goal you reached. It was the person you became while pursuing it. Because the mindset of high achievers is not simply about accomplishing more. It is about becoming more disciplined, more resilient, more confident, more intentional, more aligned with the vision they hold for their lives. The future you desire is not waiting for luck, perfect timing, or ideal circumstances. It is waiting for the person capable of creating it. And that person is built one choice, one habit, and one day at a time. Chapter 12. Living with Purpose, Growth and Excellence. Imagine standing at the top of a mountain you spent years climbing. The goal that once seemed distant is finally within reach. The sacrifices, the discipline, the setbacks, and the long days of effort have led you here. For a moment, you pause to appreciate the view. You remember the doubts you overcame, the obstacles that almost stopped you, and the countless times you chose to continue when quitting would have been easier. Then something unexpected happens. The feeling you thought would last forever begins to fade. The excitement is real, but it is temporary. The satisfaction is meaningful, but it is not permanent. Before long, a new question quietly emerges. What comes next? This moment reveals a truth that many people spend their entire lives discovering. Achievement and fulfillment are not the same thing. Achievement is reaching a goal. Fulfillment is experiencing meaning. Achievement is obtaining something you desire. Fulfillment is becoming someone you respect. Achievement can be measured by results. Fulfillment is measured by the quality of your life and the depth of your purpose. Many people mistakenly believe that success will finally make them happy. They imagine that a certain amount of money, recognition, accomplishment, or status will create lasting satisfaction. They spend years chasing a destination, convinced that joy exists somewhere beyond the next milestone. Yet countless successful people eventually discover that no achievement can permanently fill an internal void. Goals matter, success matters, accomplishments matter. But when success becomes the only source of meaning, it creates an endless cycle. Every achievement is quickly replaced by another target. Every victory becomes temporary. Every destination becomes another starting point. High achievers eventually learn a different way of living. They stop seeing success as a place they will someday arrive. Instead, they begin seeing it as a way of living. They understand that growth itself can become fulfilling. Learning can become fulfilling. Contributing can become fulfilling. The process of becoming a better version of yourself can provide a deeper sense of satisfaction than any single accomplishment ever could. This shift changes everything. When success is viewed as a destination, life becomes a constant race. There is always another goal, another challenge, another mountain to climb. Happiness is postponed until some future moment. When success becomes a journey of growth, every day contains value. Progress becomes meaningful, learning becomes meaningful, effort becomes meaningful. Even setbacks become meaningful because they contribute to development. This mindset allows high achievers to continue growing long after they have achieved their original goals. Many people stop growing when they reach a certain level of success. They become comfortable, they stop learning, they stop challenging themselves. Slowly, they begin living off past achievements rather than continuing to evolve. High achievers think differently. They understand that growth is one of the deepest human needs. Just as the body becomes weaker without movement, the mind and spirit become stagnant without growth. This does not mean constantly chasing more for the sake of more. It means remaining curious, remaining teachable, remaining willing to evolve. Some of the most fulfilled people are not necessarily those who have achieved the most. They are often the people who never stop becoming. They continue learning regardless of age. They continue improving regardless of experience. They continue exploring new possibilities regardless of previous accomplishments. Growth becomes a lifestyle rather than a temporary phase. At the heart of this approach is purpose. Purpose gives direction to achievement. Without purpose, success can feel surprisingly empty. A person may accomplish impressive things and still feel disconnected from meaning. They may reach goals they once dreamed about and still wonder why fulfillment remains elusive. Purpose answers a deeper question. Not just what do I want to achieve, but why does it matter? Purpose connects achievement to something larger than personal gain. It aligns actions with values. It transforms work into contribution and effort into meaning. When people live with purpose, their decisions become clearer. They are less influenced by temporary distractions because they know what matters most. Their goals are no longer driven solely by external rewards. They are guided by a desire to create, serve, inspire, grow, or make a difference. This creates a different kind of success. A success rooted not only in accomplishment, but also in contribution. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is this: how does my growth benefit others? High achievers eventually realize that fulfillment often expands when success is shared. Knowledge becomes more meaningful when it helps someone else. Wisdom becomes more meaningful when it is passed forward. Achievements become more meaningful when they create opportunities for others. Contribution adds depth to success. It transforms accomplishment in significance. This is why many of the world's most fulfilled individuals eventually shift their focus from what they can get to what they can give. They recognize that impact creates a level of satisfaction that personal achievement alone cannot provide. This does not require grand gestures or extraordinary fame. Sometimes contribution looks like encouraging someone who is struggling. Sometimes it means sharing what you have learned. Sometimes it means being a positive influence in your family, workplace, or community. The scale matters less than the intention. Purpose is often found in the difference you make, not the attention you receive. Living with excellence follows naturally from this mindset. Excellence is not perfection. Perfection is impossible. Excellence is a commitment to doing your best with what you have, where you are today. It is showing up fully, taking responsibility, continuing to learn, refusing to settle for less than your potential. Excellence is not about being better than other people. It is about becoming better than you were yesterday. That perspective removes comparison from the equation. Your journey becomes personal. Growth becomes the standard. Improvement becomes the focus. Over time, this creates a life of remarkable depth and meaning. You stop measuring success solely by external outcomes. You begin measuring it by who you are becoming, by the integrity of your actions, by the consistency of your growth, by the impact of your contribution, by the alignment between your values and your choices. This is the mindset that sustains achievement long after motivation fades and goals are reached. As this audiobook comes to its final chapter, remember that success is not a finish line waiting somewhere in the distance. It is not a trophy you earn and then permanently possess. It is not a destination reserved for a fortunate few. Success is a lifelong practice, a daily choice, a commitment to growth, a dedication to purpose, a pursuit of excellence. The most extraordinary lives are not built by people who simply achieve great things. They are built by people who continue evolving, continue learning, continue contributing, and continue becoming. Because in the end, the greatest achievement is not the goals you accomplish. It is the person you become along the way. And that journey of becoming your best self is one that never truly ends. As we reach the end of this journey, it is worth remembering one simple but life-changing truth. The difference was never talent. For years, many people look at successful individuals and assume they were born with something special. They believe high achievers possess more intelligence, more confidence, more luck, or some rare advantage that ordinary people simply do not have. But if this audiobook has revealed anything, it is that success is often built on something far less mysterious and far more accessible. High achievers are not immune to fear. They experience doubt, they face rejection, they make mistakes, they encounter setbacks that leave them questioning themselves. The difference is not that they avoid these challenges, the difference is how they respond to them. Throughout this audiobook, you have discovered the mindset shifts that shape extraordinary lives. The decision to believe your life can be more, the courage to move beyond self-doubt, the willingness to take ownership of your story, the strength to act despite fear, learn from failure, stay disciplined, remain consistent, and continue growing. These are not gifts reserved for a fortunate few. They are habits of thought, available to anyone willing to practice them. Success rarely arrives through one dramatic moment. More often, it is created through small choices repeated day after day. Every time you choose growth over comfort, action over hesitation, responsibility over excuses, and persistence over surrender, you begin shaping a different future. The most important lesson is this: your future does not change when circumstances become perfect. It changes when you begin thinking differently. So stop waiting for the ideal moment. Stop waiting to feel completely ready. Stop waiting for permission to become the person you are capable of being. The journey begins now. Take the first step. Trust the process. Continue growing, because the life you want is not created someday. It is created by the choices you make today,